We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Aleph and Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 19a. The Gemara had a question on the previous Amud. The question was that in the Beitzah it seems to say, according to the Rabbanan, that everything is mutter, meaning it's mutter to do hashaka. Let's say you have water that's tameh, so on Yontiv you can do hashaka, you can connect that water to a mikveh and make it tar, and you can also take that water and put it into a kli that is tameh, and then put the whole thing, immerse the whole thing in a mikveh, and not only will you be mitaher the water, you'll be mitaher the kli as well. It sounded like from the Beitzah everything is mutter according to the Rabbanan, and then the problem was that in the Mishnah they make a distinction. In the Mishnah it says hashaka is mutter. You're allowed to have the water touch the other mikveh water and purify the water, but you're not allowed to do that with the kli. You can't purify the kli in the same manner. And so the Gemara now is suggesting another answer to this question. Same if you want, I could say Rabbanan. In other words, you could say our Mishnah really follows the opinion of the Rabbanan in the Beitzah. And again, the contradiction is the Rabbanan seems to say everything is mutter. The Mishnah made a distinction. The Mishnah said hashaka is mutter, but hatbal is a problem. And the answer is v'kula masnisin b'Shabbos. You'll just simply say our Mishnah is talking about on Shabbos. So on Shabbos we make a distinction. Not everything is mutter on Shabbos. Only hashaka is mutter on Shabbos. And the Rabbanan, when they're saying that everything is mutter, they were talking about on Yontiv. So on Yontiv everything is mutter. We're more lenient. But again, there's a distinction, even according to the Rabbanan, between Shabbos and Yontiv. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught kli shenitzma me'erev Yontiv. Let's say you have a situation where you have a vessel, a utensil that became tameh from before Yontiv. So the halacha is ein matbilan oso bein hashmashos. You're not allowed to put it into the mikveh at bein hashmashos. Rashi over here says ein matbilan oso bein hashmashos mimnei shu safek laila, because bein hashmashos it might already be night. V'nimtza matvil b'yontiv, like we said earlier, if you have a kli that became tameh from before Yontiv, you really were supposed to purify it before Yontiv. You're not supposed to do it on Yontiv. So bein hashmashos is the same problem. Bein hashmashos it might be Yontiv. That's in a time period where we're not sure if it's day or night, and so therefore you're not allowed to be matvil at bein hashmashos. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, Af bechol ein matvilan oso. Even when it comes to a weekday, you're not allowed to be tovel something bein hashmashos, mimnei shetzarech harav shemesh, because in general, we mentioned this earlier as well, once you're tovel something, it's called a tvul yom, but in order to be totally pure, you need to wait for the evening, you need to wait for sunset, and you can't do that if it's bein hashmashos, it might already be sunset. Rashi over here says, Af bechol im anu roin adam hamatvil kli bein hashmashos. If we see a person trying to immerse a kli at bein hashmashos, anu tzrichen lahachziro v'limchos biyada, we need to protest against that. Mimnei shetzarech harav shemesh, because there's a halach of harav shemesh. V'zeh hamatvil kli b'layla, and a person who's being matvil a kli at night, vaday daito l'shtamish bo miyad, he's certainly thinking to use it right away. V'lo lahamtin harav shemesh de l'machar, he's not thinking he has to wait till sunset, till the sun goes down the next day. So Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, what are you talking about bein hashmashos of Yontif? Even on a weekday bein hashmashos is a problem. Again, when they should sarach harav shemesh, you need harav shemesh, and this guy obviously doesn't realize that. And the Gemara continues, v'tanakama lo boy harav shemesh, but 1 second over here, the Tanakama doesn't require harav shemesh. What's the Tanakama saying? Tanakama seems to hold that bein hashmashos it's okay on a weekday. Why isn't it obvious that Rabbi Shimon Shazuri is correct? And so the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Ashko chasinu l'Rabbanan devei Rav, the Yazvi v'ka'amri. Rava says, I found the Rabbanan from the yeshiva of Rav, and they were sitting and they were saying as follows. What's going on in this Beitzah is as follows. The machlokes between the Tanakam and Rav Shimon Shazuri, whether you can be matvil something bein hashmashos, is a question of whether we can tell what he's thinking from his actions. What's the case? The person is holding the utensil in his hand, and he's running and he's going to immerse it at bein hashmashos. So one opinion holds, that's the whole reason he's running. He's running because he realizes he needs to get there before the sun goes down, because he knows about that requirement. The other one holds, no, machmas melachto hu dekoroit. So he's just running because he has work to do. It has nothing to do with it. Doesn't show that he realizes what's going on. Rashi over here says, ma'asav dekoroit b'merutz. So he's running quickly. So meida yoda de boy harav shemesh. One says that's clear. He knows what's going on. V'hainu deroit. That's why he's running. Kesavar lahaspik kodem yitzias. So he figures he'll do this before the day ends. U'chashayira shelo yaspik ho l'val l'mikva gomer tvila. So if he gets there a little late, he'll do the tvila anyway. U'mamtin milishtamish ba'at sheyarav shemsha. We can trust that he'll wait till the next day for the sun to go down to say that it's totally pure. Again, l'machar tomorrow. Hilgach bein hashmashos is the Yontiv Aser. So therefore, it'll make sense. At bein hashmashos of Yontiv, it's Aser. Mishum the mat will be Yontiv shalol atzorach. Again, you're not supposed to immerse things on Yontiv without a need. Avo b'chol, but on a weekday, lo machina bei, we're not going to protest. The machshavto nikeresh lahariv shimshahu miskavi mitoch ma'asav shel merutza. So it's clear he knows what the halach is from the fact that he's running. And again, the other opinion says not clear at all. Maybe he's just running because he has work to do, so he has to do things quickly. And so the Gemara continues, V'amina luhu anos. So I said to them, again, this is Rav, and now he's saying back to the Rabbanan of the Yeshiva of Rav, he responded, no, b'machshavto nikeres mitoch ma'asav d'kol yama lo pligi. When it comes to whether we can tell, let's say the person is doing this action of running, can we tell what he's thinking? That everybody agrees. Everybody agrees in such a situation, it's clear that he knows the halacha. But ki pligi, what are they arguing about? Could go in the itmi b'pachos michadosha. Let's say he had a kli, the same person also had a kli that became tameh, that touched something that's smaller than the size of a lentil. V'yasa l'kamei d'Rabbanan l'shiyulei, and he came before the Rabbanan to ask the shayla. B'pachos michadosha itmilo. He wanted to know, less than a lentil, does it cause tum or not? So Ma'ar Savar, that was really the machlokas. You have this individual who doesn't seem to know the halacha about pachas michadasha. So Ma'ar Savar, so one holds midaholo gomir, from the fact that he didn't know that halacha, harav shemesh nami lo gomir. You have to assume he doesn't know the halacha of harav shemesh, and therefore again, even on a weekday, it's going to be problematic. Umar Savar, and the other one says, no, hahu de lo gomer, he doesn't know the halacha of pachas michadasha. Harav shemesh gomer, but he knows the halacha of harav shemesh. You can't necessarily assume, just because he doesn't know one halacha, he doesn't know the other. Rashi over here explains, to kuliyama lo pligi devadin ikeres binish diam. You have a regular normal person running, it's obvious. V'hai gavra di iflik bei Rabbi Shimon Shazuri v'yomar de lo amrinan bei machshavto nikeres mitoch ma'asav. Now, where Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says that we can't say that it's clear that he knows the halacha, that's kagon di itmilei mana achrina. There was another vessel this guy had. B'pachos michadashim and asheretz vasil l'shule. It touched a sheretz that was less than a lentil, less than that size. So that was the question. So hahu de lo gomer de lo chse behedya b'chadasha. The idea is there's no pasuk explicitly that talks about chadasha. Aval hariv shemesh de behedya ksib. But when it comes to the halacha of waiting for the day to end, that's already in the pasuk. So migmar gomer, so you could surely assume that he does know that halacha. With a kohen askin the mishtamish bo truma. And we're talking here about a kohen who's going to use this item with truma. And so again, according to Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, since this person does not know the halacha that less than the size of a lentil doesn't cause tumah, therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, you have to assume that he doesn't know the halacha of hariv shemesh as well. That's why Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, af bechol, you can't do such a thing. You have to stop such a person from doing it when it's ben hashmashas. And the Rabbanan say again, it's not necessarily clear just because he doesn't know the halacha about pachas michadasha. That's not written explicitly. He still might know the halacha of hariv shemesh. Therefore, ben hashmashas is not a problem. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, matvilin migav lagav. The Mishnah said that you can immerse from one principle to the other on yontiv. That's not a problem. The question is, what exactly did that mean? So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Ketzan migav lagav. What does it mean migav lagav? It means as follows: Harotza lasos gito al gav kado, the kado al gav gito ose. If you want to do something with your wine press with an immersion that you did for the pitcher, or vice versa, you want to use it for the pitcher, something an immersion that you did for the wine press, it's fine. And Ketzan mechabura lechabura. The Mishnah also said you can go from one group to another. How does that work? Haya'ochel bechabura zu. Let's say a person's eating in one chabura. V'rotz lechol bechabura acheres. He wants to eat in another chabura with another group. Harashus biyadu. He's allowed to do this, and Rashi here will explain how this works with our Mishnah. So Rashi says, Harotz lasos gitu al gav kadu, means as follows: Mishahayu kelev tamein. Let's say a person had some utensils that were tamei. V'tvidlon ladas dricha zeisav. And so then what he does is originally he immerses them in order because he's going to use it. He's going to use these kalim. He's going to step and tread upon his olives. V'nimlach lasos gito. Then he decides he wants to use it for the wine press. So ose gito agav tvilazu. Even though the immersion was originally done for one purpose and now he wants to use it for another purpose, it's fine. The immersion is good. Shehitvil l'shem kadu. Even though he originally did it for the pitcher and now he wants to do it for the wine press. You don't need to do a second tvila. That's just the halacha. So now this guy in Yontiv wants to do a second tvila anyway. Now this second immersion, he decides, since he's changing his mind what the purpose is, he wants to do a second immersion. So katani masnisan shumatvil b'yontiv. That's what the Mishnah means. He's allowed to do that second immersion on Yontiv, she'en kan tikun kli, because there's no fixing of the kli in this case. Ve'ina tvila, it's not a real tvila. Shareina tzrich, it's not really needed. In other words, it's just a chumra. You wanted to put it back into the mikvah a second time because you changed your mind what you were using these utensils for. That's what the Mishnah means. That's what the Mishnah means. Migav lagav, from one principle to another, meaning that extra immersion is just a chumra. You could do it even on Yontiv. Same exact thing with one group to the next group. Bechabura zu, he initially thinks he's eating with one group. Al Pischo, meaning it's Karban Pesach. V'hayatame, okay, and he was Tame, or maybe his vessels were Tame. V'tava Ladas Kain, and that's what he originally immersed for that group number 1. So Harashus Biyado, he can switch groups. Vein Tzarech Lachzor V'Litval, he doesn't have to do a new immersion. V'kamra Masnis, and the Mishnah is saying, same idea. Dimbala Hachmir Lahatvil Kelev L'Shem Chabur Ha'acheres, if he wants to go and do a second immersion, Matvil B'Yontiv, that kind of immersion he can even do on Yontiv. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Beis Shammai Omrim, Beis Shammai say, Mevi'in Shlomim Ve'in Somchen Alein. You're allowed to bring Karban Shlomim on Yontiv, but you shouldn't do Smicha, you shouldn't lean upon them. Avolo Olos, but you can't bring a Karban Ola. Well, Beis Hillel Omrim, Beis Hillel say, Mevi'in Shlomim Ve'olos, you can bring Shlomim, you can bring Olos, Ve'Somchen Alein, and you can do Smicha as well. Rashi over here explains, Mevi'in Shlomim B'Yontiv, L'fisha Yesh Ban Achilas Adam. You're allowed to bring a Karban Shlom on Yontiv because you can eat that. That's something that people can eat. So it's for the sake of Yontiv, for the sake of people eating, it's not a problem. Vein Somchen Alein, you can't do Smicha. Sha'asmicha Asura Misham Shvus. You're not allowed to do Smicha, that's an Isser D'Rabbanan. Shebechol Kocha Yisamach, you lean upon the animal with all of his strength. V'avalei mishtamish b'valei chaim would be an Isser D'Rabbanan of using animals. Utanan ein rochman al gavi behema. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to ride an animal. Same thing with smicha. And Rashi continues, according to Beis Shammai, avolo olos. Beis Shammai say you can't bring a Karban Ola. Ein mevi'in olos chutz mitmidin umusaf and shein Karban Sibor. Uzman and Kavua. What it means is you can't bring a Karban Ola except for the Karban Tamid, Karban Musaf. Those things were public Karbanos. They had a fixed time. Aval Olas Yachid, but an individual's Karban Ola, Lo Yavi, can't bring that. Lefi She'ein Bo Achilas Hedyot. Again, Karban Ola, unlike Shlomim, is not eaten by the person. Uchsiv Yasa Lachem V'lo Legavo. You're allowed to do malachas, which are Lachem, which are Ochel Nefesh, that you're going to eat. But if it's just Gavo, if it's just going on the Mizbeach, like a Karban Ola, then according to Beis Shammai, it's going to be a problem. And again, Beis Hillel in the Mishnah say, you could bring Shlomim, you can bring Olos, and you can do Smicha. And the Gemara now explains. Amar Ula says, Machlokes b'shalmei chagiga lismoch v'olas re'iyah likarev. The machlokes over here between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is talking about shalmei chagiga, whether you can do Smicha, and whether olas re'iyah, whether you can bring them. And Rashi over here explains. Machlokes b'shalmei chagiga lismoch v'olas re'iyah likarev. Masnizin demodu tarvayu b'shlomim lohavi. Our Mishnah said that everybody agrees the Karban Shlomim you could bring. They were only arguing whether you could do Smicha by the Karban Shlomim. So b'shalmei chagiga modu b'shami v'havasam ne'shen chovas hayom. What he's saying is that by Karban Shlomim, which are shalmei chagiga, meaning Shlomim that you bring for the Yontiv, part of the obligation to bring on Yontiv, that's what Beishamai say you could bring. Kiraminan b'chagiga mi v'chagosam oso chag. V'ola shenechelku. And what about by the Karban Ola, which they're arguing about? Af b'havos, and they're arguing even whether you could bring the Karban Ola. But olas re'iyah nechleku, they're arguing about olas re'iyah, which also is an obligation. V'ahiu dekasharu Beis Hillel. That's what Beis Hillel allow. Memnei shishal yontiv. That's a yontiv Karban. The nafkalon mi v'lo yeiro panai rekam. So in other words, that's the machlokus. When they're arguing by Karban Shlam whether you could do smicha, so that's by shalmei chagiga. When they're arguing by Karban Ola whether you can bring it, so that's by olas re'iyah likarev. That's a machlokus whether it can be brought. The Beis Shammai Sabri Beis Shammai hold as follows. V'chagosam oso chag la'Hashem. It says you're going to make a chag. Chagiga in olas re'iyah lo. It means that you can bring Karban chagiga, not olas re'iyah. Beis Hillel Sabri, Beis Hillel say no. La'Hashem means la'Hashem. Called to la'Hashem. Anything you bring for Hashem is going to be okay. Avol nedarim unedavos. But what about karbanos that are just donations? They're not olas re'iyah, nothing like that. So then divrei hakol ain't craven beyond yontiv. That, according to Ula, everybody agrees that's a problem. You can't bring such a karban on yontiv. V'chein omer Ravada Barava, and Ravada Barava says the same thing. Nedarim unedavos ain't craven beyond yontiv. When it comes to nedarim and nedavos, you're not allowed to bring them on yontiv. And Rashi over here explains, Avol nedarim and nedavos hol vein zmanon hayom, because nedarim and nedavos, that's not meant to be brought today in particular, klal at all. Divrei hakol ain't craven, you can't bring it. V'afilu shlamim, even if it's a shlamim that's a nedarim and nedavos is a problem. The kol shekein olos, and certainly olos, tiyachol lohavi and lachar zman, you can bring it later if you want. Now, even though the chagigas and the olas re'iyah, you can bring them all 7 days. You don't need to bring it on yontiv. Sharu, but that already they permit. Shema yeyones, because maybe there'll be a mistake, an accident, you won't bring it. V'lo yakrivena b'shara yomim. Utanan over haregel v'lo chag eino chay b'achriyuso. V'achem mefarish b'vraisa l'kamon b'shamay time v'sharula. So again, we're afraid you might not do it. There might be an issue. So therefore, that's why by these other karbanos they're going to be allowed. But again, a darman and davos is going to be a problem. So the Gemara continues. So we have the following question on Ula again. Ula is saying the machlokas by shalmei chagiga, whether you could do smicha, and the machlokas is by olas re'iyah, whether you can bring it. But everybody agrees nedarim and davos cannot be brought. So we have the following question. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Lo nechliku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel do not argue. Al ola she'ena shel yontiv. If you have a carbon ola that's not a carbon ola sriya of yontiv, she'ena kreva be yontiv. Everybody agrees you can't bring that on yontiv. The al shlamim she'ein shel yontiv, and everyone agrees if you have a carbon shlamim of yontiv, she'krevim be yontiv. You could certainly bring it on yontiv. Al ma nechliku. What are they arguing about? Al ola she shel yontiv. They're arguing about a carbon ola of yontiv. The al shlamim she'enon shel yontiv, and they're arguing about a carbon shlamim that's not related to the yontiv. Shebeis Shammai omrim lo yavi. Beis Shammai say you can't bring it. Ubeis Hillel omrim yavi, and Beis Hillel say you could bring it. And it's clear over here that they're arguing about at least a carbon shlamim that's not of yontiv. And we just said nedarim and nedavos, everybody agrees you don't bring. So again, it seems to be a question against ula. And so the Gemara says, Taretz veimahachi. You can answer this brayso, you just have to change the words around a little as follows. Amar Rav Shimon ben Elazar, what it really means is as follows. Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, Lo nechliku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel al ola ushlamim she'enon shel yontiv. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree, if it's a carbon ola or shlamim that's not related to the yontiv, like nedarim and nedavos, she'ein kraven be yontiv, everybody agrees you don't bring that on yontiv, that's consistent with ula. The al shlamim she'ein shel yontiv she'kraven be yontiv. If you have a carbon shlamim of yontiv, certainly everyone agrees you could bring it on yontiv. Al man nechliku, what are they arguing about? Al ola she shel yontiv. They're arguing about a carbon ola of yontiv. Again, like we said, the olas re'iyah, whether you can bring that or not. Beis Shammai omrim lo yavi, Beis Hillel omrim yavi. Beis Shammai say not to bring, Beis Hillel say you could bring. And if you understand Rav Shimon ben Elazar this way, it's consistent with ula. So the Gemara continues. Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef says, Tanai shakalt me alma. You're just grabbing Tanaim from anywhere. In other words, you're going to change around the words of this brayso. You can't find any other Tanaim that can support ula. Tanai, it's a machlokas Tanaim. There are some Tanaim that go with ula and some that don't. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Shlomim haboy machmas yontiv bi yontiv. If you have carbon shlomim that are brought for the sake of the yontiv on yontiv, Beis Shammai omrim somech alein me'erev yontiv. Beis Shammai say the smicha should be done before yontiv. V'shochten bi yontiv, you do the shchita on yontiv. Ubeis Hillel omrim, and Beis Hillel say somech alein bi yontiv, you can even do the smicha on yontiv. V'shochten bi yontiv, and you shechtem on yontiv. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yotes Amud Beis.